Welcome everyone. Today I have a new Diablo 4 build for the Evade Spiritborn. And yes, since the nerf of Evade, a lot of people are saying Evade is not as good, and I have been looking for some cool Evade build that can do higher level pit dungeons that can also retain the speed. So over here we're learning from one of the Chinese content creators who has updated his latest Evade build. This build can take around 1 to 2 minutes to clear pit 95, and during this demonstration, you can see that he has tons of evade and over 8 evade as he refreshes. The speed of this build is pretty decent. The plus side of this build is that you can now do much higher level pit because you are using the new setup. You are no longer using the unique wand which triggers evade every time, but here you're getting more damage through using a legendary item with crafted aspects. This build does allow you to push for high level pits and also allows you to clear the rock content much quicker. The downside for the build after the nerf is that you cannot permanently evade, but you can still make do. So looking at the demonstration here, you can see that his evade is constantly resetting and he's moving super fast. And we'll be going through this video of what are the gear requirements and also masterwork and also tempering you needed for this build. Because we'll be building a lot of evade cooldowns together with additional cooldowns and also additional damage, the build still feels pretty smooth as you can see in the replay. And during this short demonstration, you can see our player, even though he got lost a few times, he was able to reach the boss within about 1 minute and 30 seconds. And let's have a look at this build against the pit 95 boss. So over here we have a boss and the boss will disappear in about 5 to 7 seconds. So it is definitely still a very decent build for farming, and if you guys are playing Evade and you want to play more Evade, I definitely recommend have a look at this build and look into what you need to change for your current build. Now before we dive into the builder's guide, a big thank you and also shout out to Leo Lee for sharing this one. He is known as one of the great theory crafters and also builder for Diablo 4 this season, and he has done a lot of great build. So here he and also other content creators has shared 2 versions of the build. There is a version that has no mythical items, there is a version that uses 2 mythical items. And after making this video, I'll be making my mobilities guide for you guys to translate everything from Chinese to English. So let's first go through the build and also items required. For the mythical build, you are using Shackle or Harlequin's Quest together with the new chest Shard of False Death. If you have those 2 unique items, I'll recommend going with a unique setup because those 2 items can provide you a lot of damage reduction, a lot of cooldowns, and even higher maximum life. And over here you can see the choices of the legendary aspects. Let's go through the most important one on the weapon. On the weapon, we're using Redirect Force, and Redirect Force now gain double the effect if you craft this one on the weapon. This is one of the reasons this particular build can push for pit 95 or pit 100 very quickly, simply because monsters are getting one-shotted and they are doing hundreds of billions of damage. So this build does definitely have higher damage because of this particular crafting on the legendary weapon. As for the amulet, they're now crafting the aspect of interdiction. And interdiction. Interdiction crafted on the amulet provides you with more block chance, which in return translates into more critical damage. So those 2 are the centerpiece of the crafting using those items. Other than that, we're gaining additional damage while having a barrier. We are gaining additional armor, which will be translated into damage over here. So we do have the unyielding hits, which turns our armor into additional damage. And here we do have the Blinding Morris, which allows us to do more damage against slow enemies. And finally over here, every 3 attack will provide us with a chance to unleash Payback to do a little more damage. Now this of course is rather optional for this particular legendary aspects. And you can see in the other version of the build, they're using Fist of Fit instead of having a Payback over here. And this actually allows them to have even higher lucky hit, more critical chances, and also additional ways to apply crowd control. Now in terms of the spirit hole choices, we're going with Eagle and also Gorilla. And here I do want to mention some of the important aspects that is not translated, but I'll translate for you guys after. We are getting maximum resolve stack still. And if you have seen the previous video, if you follow that tricky method they're using, they can get up to 18 maximum resolve on the pants. And here they also having maximum resolve on the amulet. Other than that, this build is actually very heavy requirement on the evade cooldown together with additional cooldown coming from the Shackle or the Harlequin's Quest. So you can see the boots and also the amulet are crafted for evade cooldown. And they even recommend the tempering and also master crafting into additional evade cooldown. So if you can get evade cooldown up to about 28 or plus percentage over here, and then you want more cooldowns on the Harlequin's quest. So this build is quite focused on the cooldowns of evade. And by having additional evade, this build is gonna work once you have those required stats. So it's very important, guys. If you want to get the build working, you need to get the right work. You need to get the right masterwork tempering, and then you need to make sure you get a little more cooldowns, and this will work. Now, in terms of the skills, it is quite straightforward. We're still reducing evade cooldown through Thunder Spike, and here I do want to mention one of the most important points over here is to gain additional evade over here. You do want to find additional evade over here, and something I did forget to mention is you will want to try to find additional evade on the boots. So if you look carefully in the video, you can see the Chinese player has a 7-8 evade over here. Notice that evade cooldown is so fast that he's getting evade cooldown back. He's always sitting on 6, 7 or 8 evades, and this means you can permanent evade very quickly. And even though you're not dashing as fast compared to before, you are doing way more damage compared to before, and this is the upside. Now, in terms of the choice of ruins, we're going with additional critical strike chances, which can be up to 25%, and also additional Earthen Bulwark. Earthen Bulwark allows us to have a barrier to deal more damage, and we will be stacking close to 5,000 armor, which will then translate into additional damage for your weapon because of these aspects. And briefly going through the mercenaries are pretty straightforward. You can see they did change the pathing a little bit. Instead of going all the way to the left, they're going a little bit to the middle. And here the other side is not much difference because we're not using attack speed that much, but you do want to be aware of the changes of mercenaries. Briefly going through the Paragon and also the glyphs of choice. So I'll be translating this for you guys very soon, and this will of course be on the English Builder's Guide. So here we have the Spirit Knot over here for additional damage and also critical damage amplifier. Here we have the Fulminate, very straightforward. And over here we'll be having Colossal because we're still stacking Resolve stacks. And the next one we have is going to be Talent, which allows us to have more Eagle spell damage and also more lightning damage. And finally we have Jagged Plume, which is going to be essential if you're running the evade build for the Stone Feathers to do even higher damage. Now briefly going through the skills, rotations and also tips for the build. As you can see for the build, you're super fast, you're dashing around. One of your greatest mobility is actually the hunt. You can use this one to jump through walls and also jumping through gaps. And once you use this one correctly, it does feel like the build is even faster as you jump around. Most of the time you are dashing around. And well, dashing around is the part of the build, right? And once you have achieved enough cooldowns for your, oh, there's a leap, I was looking for that part. So you can see that you can leap across edges and across cliffs, and this can be very good for mobility, especially for the mazes. Now because you are dashing around, one of the biggest things you want to focus on is to kill as much monsters as you can while not slowing down. And once you get the hang of this, you pretty much can clear anywhere from pit 100 within 1 minute to 2 minutes. Really depends on the map and also the monster density. And this still retain about 70% of the speed compared to before the nerf of the evade build. Now before we finish, for those of you that want to try the no mythical setup, I do have a small warning for you guys because you are not getting as much cooldown on the helmet, but you are doing more damage. So the trade-off over here is those two items are pretty easily, I guess, tempered and also made once you have them. But if you don't have those two items, it is still doable on this build. But notice that you want greater effects on cooldowns over here, and you want even more evade temperings on the boots and also on the amulets for evade cooldown, because you're not getting as much cooldown compared to the mythical one coming from Harlequin's quest, especially with the greater effects on cooldown. The plus side of using a non-mythical build is that you can craft more resilience, you can craft more resolve, and this will allow you to deal even higher damage.